Lord Jonathan Young.
Is this a valedictory?
Mr Speaker, as I came here to the debating chamber, I passed an exhibition by Anne Frank, or about Anne Frank, and I'm sure that many of us here in this chamber will recall studying her or hearing about her life. She said, everyone has inside of them a piece of good news. The good news is that you don't know how great you can be, what you can accomplish, and what your potential is. That remarkable young girl who lived and experienced utter hardship yet prevailed to be one of the great examples of courage as seen through her writing, died of typhus in a concentration camp in 1945 at the age of 16. She went on to say, I finally realised that I must do my schoolwork to keep from being ignorant, to get on in life, to become a journalist because that's what I want. I know I can write, but it remains to be seen whether I really have talent. When I write, I can shake off all my cares. My sorrow disappears, my spirits are revived. But, and that's a question, will I ever be able to write something great? Will I ever become a journalist or a writer? I tell you this story because no doubt many of us have walked past her exhibition on display here in our Parliament this week. And she has become great, and the greatness we celebrate was already there in the words she was writing as a teenage girl. The education of our young people is incredibly important, not only for their success, but I think also for the success of our country and its future. We are very committed to the education of young New Zealanders who burgeon with the same promise and potential. The tragedy for many of those young people is that their potential gets buried by a lack of achievement at an early age. And so they carry through with them this lack of achievement into every following year and level of their education. Our Minister of Education, the Honourable Anne Tolley, says the findings of an international study by the OECD show that more needs to be done in our nation to lift achievement for all New Zealand students. The 2009 results from the Programme for International Student Assessment compare the performance of 15-year-olds in reading, literacy, maths and science. New Zealand continues to have a disproportionate number of lower achievers, and this has not changed in the past 9 years. Further, there has been no change in our reading performance since 2000 and in maths since 2003. That's grim news. And it is what has empowered National's educational policy. Now, there is some good news as well. Our top students are some of the best in the world. In reading, maths and science, we performed well above the average for OECD countries. And this is a credit to our teachers, students, parents, and our education system. However, we are faced with this challenge to work together to address the issues raised in this report. This is why our government introduced national standards in education, which is not a test but an assessment to discover difficulty early on, so it does not become entrenched. So we can see a shift in this disproportionate number of lower achievers. I speak to educationalists all the time. They tell me they already know who the people are who are in that failing tail. My answer then is that obviously identifying them has not brought the solution. The solution is, what do we do next? National standards are a tool to assess where a child is in their educational journey compared to where they could or ought to be. It is a measure of progress against potential. And this is the point. Educational achievement is built upon the foundation of previous learning. But if previous learning doesn't exist or is deficient, and if no rungs are climbed in that educational ladder, it leaves our young people aspiring for things they can't reach. And we have discovered that 1 in 5 are leaving school without the literacy and numeracy achievements to take them on to an apprenticeship or further training in order that they may engage in the modern economy. We've also discovered that 1 in 5 15 and 19-year-olds cannot find employment at the present. Is an interesting correlation. We have 20% of young New Zealanders struggling to learn and struggling to find employment. And as the OECD report has stated, which the opposition are usually so keen to quote, we have a disproportionate number of low achievers, of young people, of young children who have intelligence and potential, but for many reasons they have been disconnected from learning. It's because we believe they have intelligence and potential that we have put national standards in place, which has relevance in diagnosing those disconnects. It then assists educators to determine the next step in their educational journey. Our policy regarding early childhood education is very much part of discovering and releasing the potential of young children. We value early childhood education because we know it helps prepare children for future learning and assists parents to participate in the workforce. Our policy is to broaden our reach to those who are disconnected from learning. In some parts of the country, up to 40% of our children are missing out from early childhood education centres. As proud as the previous government sound, the statistics tell us, both ERO and OECD, that there are and have been gaps children have been falling through for some time, 9 years and up to a decade. Under their watch, no significant progress was made with those who are disconnected or were disconnected to learning. And it starts with early childhood education. There are masses of young children missing out on taxpayer investment into their future. And this government is making a significant investment. There is more invested per child in ECE, early childhood education, than in primary school or secondary school. We are now at the stage where the taxpayer is subsidising ECE centres at an average of $7,600 per child per year. This compares to an average of $5,528 for a primary school student and $6,733 for a student at secondary school. Investment into early childhood education has never been higher than before. And this is the big news. This is the big news. It has never reached more children than ever before. We on this side of the House, we are proud of that. John Key said earlier in this year, he says, this government views our education system as one of the fundamental tools for creating an egalitarian society where all New Zealanders have an opportunity to succeed. And that statement was said at the beginning of the year. We are creating greater educational opportunities for more young New Zealanders than ever before to give them the best possible start in life so they don't end up being a sad statistic in the bottom 20%. Under the ECE system we inherited from Labour, the government will this year spend a record $1.4 billion, up from less than $400 million a decade ago. Despite this, the number of children starting school with some form of ECE has barely increased at all, and in some parts of the country up to 40% of children are missing out altogether. Mr. Speaker, in building a stronger economy, building skills and knowledge in our young people is a high priority so they can be future-proofed as they look to their working futures. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable